All right, welcome everybody to project number 4 of Freaky Friday. This is Trick or Treat, and let's get started. I base coated my plaque with antique white. I know it looks a little green in this video, but it's antique white. And I've traced my drawing on, and now I'm using a palette knife, and I just want to make it look like kind of weathered wood behind here. So I'm using my palette knife, and I'm just kind of scraping on some khaki tan here and there. You can kind of see I'm kind of messing around with it and playing with it, and just anywhere. It just doesn't matter. You don't want big blotches, and I ended up with a few big blotches, but it does kind of blend in a little. And just use your palette knife either flat or on the edge. And just kind of practice on a piece of paper or something before you start on your design if you want. And it doesn't matter if you get it on your design because you're going to paint over that anyway. So I just kind of did this all the way around, just sporadically here and there. And I end up using my finger here a little bit just to kind of blend it in a couple places. Some of it got a little thicker than I wanted, so I wanted to put some of that off with my finger. And then I'm actually going to take a piece of soft sandpaper and just kind of go over it a little bit. It lightens it up a little bit. You can see that kind of lighten up there. I'm going back in here and adding a little bit more wherever I want it. And I'll do the same thing. I just kind of rub it in and then I sand it a little bit to get it the way I want it to look. Okay, now we're ready to start shading. I started actually shading this with khaki tan, but I didn't like it. So I got out the Mississippi Mud and I like that much better. I like that little bit of darker that it gave it. Just going to go around my entire design and then around the outside edges with the Mississippi Mud. I'm using a large angle brush here. You know me, I love my angle brushes. So here it is around the design. I haven't done my outside edges yet, but this is the design. And you can see that wood grain kind of looking in there. I really like the way that turned out. Now we're going to go ahead and float around our outside edges, which I've already done some of here. And then I've started with my spiced pumpkin to do some of the candy. And that's going to be this round candy and the swirly type pop on the left-hand side, and then some of those little round candies at the bottom. And you'll probably have to go over this a couple times to get a good coat of that spiced pumpkin. Again, I'm using a next size down, smaller angle brush. Now with lemon yellow, I'm going to go ahead and start doing the other wrapped lollipop in the middle. And then I'll do a couple of those little round candies at the bottom with lemon yellow. And it will take several coats of the lemon yellow. You could actually paint this white, the design white, before you paint your colors. That would probably brighten your colors and you might not have to do quite as many coats. But I didn't want to do that. So I just went ahead and started with my color and just did quite a few layers. And you can paint over that bat because you're going to be able to see him through there anyway. Just try to smooth it out and try to get some nice even coat on there. Again, with the lemon yellow, we're going to do the other swirls on this swirl pop over here and do several coats as usual. It's kind of a fun little popsicle or candy to do, not popsicle. I toyed with making this orange and black, but I decided I didn't want to do that. But you could. Now the licorice candy at the bottom, we're going to paint lamp black. And I will be shading this with Snow White and adding a few lines later. But for now, he's just lamp black. And I'm using the small angle brush on this as well. Going back in here and adding some more lemon yellow. I really want those colors to be nice and bright. So I think I did about 3 or 4 coats on the lemon yellow. The candy apple is Cinnamon Drop, which is a nice bright red. And I'm just going to base coat that in. And it takes about 2 coats of the Cinnamon Drop. Try to smooth out your strokes in here. Now the caramel apple, I'm base coating this with honey brown. And I will do 2 coats again, just because it's a little more translucent than some of the other paints. I decided to go ahead and start shading my oranges, and I'm using Canyon Orange to shade around those candies. And I'll use the same color on all of the orange candies. Lots of water on my brush, getting that nice smooth float. You can always dab off a little if you get too much. I'm using the tip of my angle brush. It's kind of a big angle brush, but I already had it loaded and I just wanted to use the same brush, but I'm just using the tip of that brush. I'm going to go ahead and with that Canyon Orange, I'm going to shade around the face that's on my lollipop here. So I'm just kind of starting with the mouth. I'm just doing the outside edges of the eyes and the mouth. Again with Canyon Orange. The yellow we're going to shade with True Ochre. Sometimes I use Marigold, but today I decided to use True Ochre. I like the dark it gives it. Gonna go around that swirly pop, and then I'll go around my lollipop and then the two little round candies. Again, using the tip of that angle brush on the lollipop there, or on the swirly candy. And using that same True Ochre, you want to make sure you go around your bat on the lollipop. Somehow I got a glob on there. Don't know where that came from. Okay, we're going to shade around the carameled apple, and I'm using milk chocolate for this. I had started out with something lighter, but I didn't like it, so I wanted to switch to a darker color. But I like the milk chocolate. Just going to go around all those edges. Once I get that apple done, I decided to go ahead and use the same color and do my sticks on the caramel and the candy apple. And I didn't repaint those. They're still the same antique white that I did the background in because I wanted to just leave them that same color. So I'm just floating milk chocolate around their edges. Now we're going to paint in our bat. We're using lamp black. And you're just going to base coat him in. I'm using that small angle brush. Nice tip on that so you can get those little ears and the points on his wings. And just give him a good coat. Usually just takes one coat. Now we're going to go ahead and fill in our face on our pumpkin lollipop. And I'm just using lamp black again. And that little angle brush again. Just give those a nice coat. The chocolate on top of my caramel apple, the white chocolate, I started with light mocha. And I'm base coating that in. It'll take about 2 coats. And again, just smooth out those strokes. Now I'm taking my stippler brush and I'm just going to swirl in some light mocha on here to highlight my caramel apple. And I wanted it kind of blended in, so I added a little bit more. And that's that light mocha. And you use this dry. Use your brush dry, don't get it wet. Just kind of swirling that in there. Now I dried that brush off a little bit. Didn't get it wet. I just dried it off and got some of that light mocha off, and I put lemon yellow on there. And I'm just kind of highlighting those candies, and I'm going to put a little bit on the pumpkin lollipop as well. I'm going to shade my apple, my candied apple, with Antique Maroon. It's a nice dark red. Just going to go around those lines, give a nice good float on there. Again, using that angle brush. See how nice it goes into those little tight spaces? I picked up some raw sienna, and I'm going to shade my frosting at the top with raw sienna. Very lightly. I don't want this to be really dark. It might look a little darker in the photograph or in the video than it actually is. I come back over to this one, and I'm just going to lighten it up a little bit. You can see me taking some of that off. And I can do that because I have water on my brush. Now there's a couple little pieces of chocolate in that frosting. So I used my milk chocolate and just kind of dabbed in, no particular shape or anything, just little square pieces kind of chocolate. I'm coming back in here and I'm darkening and widening up my float on the candied apple. I just wanted it to stand out a little bit more, so I'm just adding a little bit more on there. Now here I'm taking some bittersweet chocolate on the very, very tip of my brush, and I'm just shading the bottom of those little chocolate pieces. Now I'm going to go back in here with my raw sienna and I'm going to shade just a little bit of area underneath those chocolate pieces just to make them look like they're sitting in the frosting and not just sat there on top. Gives them a little bit of a home here. Just kind of tuck them in. I'm shading my licorice candy with Snow White. Going to go around those outside edges. Just lightly. We don't want something real heavy. Adding a little bit of highlight to my carameled apple. On that left-hand side of the plaque. Now I'm taking my liner brush with some thin Snow White, and I am just adding in the stripes on my licorice candy. Decided to brighten up those little stippled areas on my candy with that lemon yellow. I'm using some honey brown for the lollipop sticks. Just kind of base coat those in. I decided to go ahead and highlight my candies with Snow White. Just a nice float of Snow White. I just love adding the highlighting and the details to everything. It just makes everything come alive. Highlight my candied apple. It was a little bit darker than what I wanted. I came back in with some water and kind of thinned that out a little bit. Highlighting my suckers. Now I'm going to highlight the frosting on my carameled apple with Snow White as well. Kind of brighten that up a little bit. Look how that just looks so good. I'm also adding a little bit of highlight with the Snow White to those sticks for the candied apples and the caramel apple. Brighten them up a little bit on that side. Just wherever you think it needs to be lightened up or brightened up. Now here in the middle of my caramel or my candied apple, I'm using spiced pumpkin, and I'm just kind of dry brushing that on there as a highlight. I decided to add a little bit of Snow White highlight to the inside of my face on my lollipop. And I'm just going around that one side and on one side of the mouth, just lightly. Makes it stand out a little bit more. And I am going to go around my bat, at least the top edges. And again, it just makes him stand out a little bit more. I also am adding a small little tiny highlight with Snow White to the very tops of my chocolate drops. Okay, now I'm going to start putting the wrappers on my candies. That's 2 lollipops and the licorice candy. I'm just using Snow White for this. And I'm just going to go around the outside of my candy. Still using quite a bit of water on my brush. I don't want it too thick. I think I actually put it on a little thicker than I wanted, but I went ahead and left it. And this is just kind of a squiggling line that you're doing for that the wrapper bottom. And then I actually do another one, kind of because you can see both of the little edges of that wrapper down there. It's not just flat. And the same thing on the little bat lollipop. I'm adding a C-stroke of Snow White to the candy pieces. And then I'm also going to add one to the candied apple as well. I did go in and put some thinned lines of Snow White on those little wrapper ends. You can kind of see them. I wanted them to stick out a little bit more and be a little bit more pronounced. And then I'm adding some C-strokes to the side of that twisted lollipop. I'm coming back in to darken this up a little bit with some bittersweet chocolate. I just want to give it a little bit more depth and a little bit more shadow around part of my design. And I also end up going around the edge here and there, not the complete outside edge, but just here and there on that outside edge. And I'm not doing all of the design either. You'll notice I'm just kind of doing it here and there, mostly around the bottom and the portions that it would be in a deeper shadow. I just really like the way that made that look. It also kind of made those candies stick out a little bit more. See how that just makes those candies pop? Get these little shadowed areas in here. I decided to add some more in here along these edges of the sticks for my apples. And then on the back side of that twisted lollipop. Just kind of play with it and put them where you think it needs to be. Now here I'm going along those outside edges with that bittersweet chocolate. And you can see I'm not really doing the whole thing. I'm just kind of, excuse me, I'm just kind of going here and there, adding a little bit of antique look to the edges of that plaque. All right, now the stenciling on this is a Lori Spelt stencil, the Creative Coach, and it is BCS number 257. It's the trick part is one word on the stencil, but as you'll see, when it comes to the treat part, I'm going to piece letters together because there wasn't one that really fit the size that I wanted. So I will kind of piece that together. I did draw these out on the pattern, so if you don't have the stencil, you could trace them and just do them by hand with a script liner. But I'm not real big on lettering with a script liner, so I use the stencil. Remember to use your stencil dry, and this is using lamp black. Here's where I'm piecing that word treat together. I use the first two letters on trick, and then I piece together some of the other letters from a different word. You can tape those off if it's easier for you. But there was enough space in here. I really didn't have to worry too much about getting paint everywhere. One thing nice about these stencils is that you can see through them, so you can place your letters pretty easily. Now I'm just taking an old toothbrush and I'm spattering my design with Snow White. Now I wanted the letters to stand out a little bit more, so I used thin Snow White and a script liner brush, and I'm just going around one side of the letters, which would be the left side of the letters with the Snow White. And I did have to go over it several times because I wanted the white to really stand out to make the letters stand out. Otherwise, it got kind of lost with the design in the background. So just carefully go across any places that you think would be on the left side of those letters. And there you have it, trick or treat. This turned out to be a really cute and easy, fun project. I did go back in with my liner pen, which is a Macron pen, and do some of the detailed lines. But other than that, it turned out great. I love it. I hope you enjoyed this project. I'll see you again soon.